Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Open Mic Gripe with Jay Rice and Jeffrey Ide, the place where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Open Mic Gripe is a weekly podcast dedicated to hearing your gripes, grievances, and opinions on any and all topics.
Every episode, Jay and I will have an opportunity to get to the bottom of the issues which are lingering in the back of your mind and engage in order to create constructive conversation using a combination of lighthearted comedy and well-formed logic.
If you feel like we are wrong, inappropriate, or biased, and let's be honest, you probably will, then call in, email, or tweet and let your voice be heard. You can email us at openmicgripe@gmail.com or tweet to us at openmicgripe. And you can also find us on Facebook if you search for Open Mic Gripe.
So jump on in and gripe on the Open Mic with Jay Rice and Jeffrey Ide. Welcome back, Jay.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, I can never tell with your just like resting bitch face all the time if you're impatient, tired, frustrated, or just
Happy isn't one of those?
It doesn't. So we have a guest today.
Okay.
We have a guest in the studio, Eric.
Hello.
Did you ask him how he wanted to be introduced? Did he just want to be introduced as Eric?
Well, I was going to ask him, do you want your name to be used on the show?
I'm pretty okay with that.
All right. And would you like your last name?
Sure.
Okay. Our guest for the things that should have been done before recording.
Yes.
So welcome Eric Olson to the show. A little bit later, we'll be getting to the topic of conversation. So feel free to jump in at any point along the way.
All right.
Unless Jeffrey and I are bitching at each other, then you probably want to stay out
I'll
of it.
just observe.
So, Jay, as usual, I'd like to kick us off with a hypothetical question.
Okay. And just for the audience members, of course, they know that, just so you know, I have not heard this hypothetical question before, so this had not been previously discussed.
I like to catch them off guard. So, the question for today. Extraterrestrial intelligent species comes to the planet.
Uh-huh. Do you need to use hand motions for this? It's a little off-putting. You can use hand motion. I know it's making you uncomfortable now not having your hand out there.
Yeah!
Okay, go ahead. Extraterrestrials come to the planet.
I talk with my hands, even if you can't see.
Okay.
I feel like you can convey some of that in your voice.
Okay.
Okay. So, extraterrestrials
Yes.
come to planet Earth and choose a random person on the planet and offer them to represent all humanity.
Mm-hmm.
If they say yes, they will speak.
My answer is yes.
Okay. If they say no, then the aliens will choose another random person.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say yes to this proposition, and why?
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm assuming that I'm representing Earth and all humans somewhere else. Like if there's going to be like a council anywhere or anything, like I've got to go there and represent all humans.
Yeah, just like...
Yeah, absolutely. This is not... Yes, because... Why? I like traveling around the Earth. Why would I not want to travel off of the Earth?
Because you like traveling around the Earth.
Well, I would much rather travel off the Earth.
Okay.
and then hopefully I'll be gone when the human species destroys itself.
Okay.
And they'll be like, well, now you're just representing yourself.
Don't tell them. Just let them believe that.
And
there's
then
still
I
a
go on
population.
having a life where I basically intermingle my DNA with an alien species and start a whole new breed.
You are accepting this position
Wholeheartedly.
for the purpose of
Alien...
just screwing around with aliens.
Yes. It's one of it. It's one of the perks.
Okay. Eric, how would you respond to this?
I would say yes, not for entirely the same reasons.
But he's thinking it's a good idea.
More out of concern for what somebody else might do in my place if they were to choose another random person.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Though traveling through space would be pretty awesome.
yeah, naturally. I don't think it's egotistical whatsoever if you'd have to say yes. Because if they were going to choose another random person, chances are
They're not going to be as
it would
smart
be
as
a
us.
very traditionally minded person. Right?
Maybe, I mean...
I mean, chances are they're going to be from China. Or India.
Oh, like truly random out of all the people on the globe.
Yeah, well, not like... What other kind of random would there be?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, walk down the street and pick the next person walking by. I don't know.
Well, for the same reason that university surveys are not the most accurate surveys,
Yeah.
not the most random.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question for you, Jeffrey.
Okay.
Alien comes down. I'm using hand motions, people. Alien comes down to this room, and you can't go, but they say, and they say they'll send me instead. Would you let them take me and be the representative for the whole Earth?
What's my alternative?
Eric.
So I have... So in my position, I'm sitting here between you and Eric.
Yes.
And I have to decide who is going to represent humanity.
Yes.
Between the two of you,
Yes.
is there any right answer here?
There's one.
Well, if I can say, Eric sometimes wears an anarchist symbol in the form of jewelry. That alone kind of, I feel, disqualifies him from the position. Because I don't know where humanity would have to go at that point if he became the advisor for all the species.
I'll take it.
You, on the other hand, would be more focused on just alien debauchery.
Well, and I'd make sure that, I'd be like, hey, don't blow up my planet. Don't invade us.
In all fairness, I feel like I would also take that position.
Hey, whoa, yeah, like now piggybacking off of me here. Just sound like a yes man over there.
All
Well,
right.
I feel like the implication, because it's a choice between the two of us, is that if I had the position, I'd be like, yeah, blow them all up.
Oh, see,
Screw those
he's even
people.
saying it. That's what he would do. He would just. I think you made what I'm saying is you made the right choice, Jeffrey.
I'm also quite convinced that if a hyper-intelligent extraterrestrial species exists, it probably wouldn't understand sarcasm or hyperbole. So,
Wait,
if
so
anything, Eric's comments would be completely misunderstood. Like, the entire time would be all sarcasm. No?
I think they might misunderstand all of us.
That is, well, I mean, one of us has clear intentions. Jay would just put his dick on things.
That is fairly straightforward.
Considering I don't know what alien physiology is like, I might just put my dick on it.
Just and convince him that's how we all say hello.
That'd be weird, but you don't know what kind of space herpes there are.
Right. Well, now you have to understand though, as when you come back down to planet Earth, because you've already spoken for our entire species, you have to make good on your account.
I'd be like, hey, are we blown up yet? No. You're welcome.
But the aliens would be watching you at that point, and they'd catch you out if you didn't say hello to everyone by putting your dick on them. You'd have to keep it going.
Well, what are they gonna put the Earth ambassador in jail? I don't think so. I could just tell them, hey, by the way, this is what we do up in space.
I'm glad to know that the only thing keeping you from putting your dick on everything is jail.
Hey, it's a good reason.
All right.
Good transition. Let's move. We're moving on.
I'd like to get to introduce our guest a little bit more. Eric, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? A summary, possibly?
Summary.
Yeah.
I
How about a little bit about yourself in conjunction with what you're here to talk about today?
well,
Hey, what's that necklace you're wearing?
that is a Bitcoin, or well, it's a Bitcoin logo made out of silver, which I ordered from the same person who made some of my other necklaces you've seen.
Like the anarchy one that
Like
that,
the-
that
the
lost you
anarchy
that lost
one
you the
that,
Earth ambassadorship.
That lost me the Earth ambassadorship because apparently some of my political thoughts are more terrifying to Jeffrey than
Me putting my dick
random
on everybody.
genital contact with a newly introduced alien species in the name of representing all of Earth.
Well,
No, but I don't know. Best place to probably start my story is when I found out about Bitcoin, which would have been probably sometime in 2011, right after it reached parity with the dollar price wise, and then fell back a bit. It got some press, and I had heard about it previously and kind of disregarded it as something. Well, that would be really cool, but I don't see people doing that. So after it started to get press again, after reaching dollar parity, I read the articles about it and started to look into it seriously. Read some of the material, and kind of had the realization that this was a real thing that was really going to happen. And after that point, did everything I could to learn about every aspect of it and how it worked and what was going to happen with it. And I purchased Bitcoins. I got involved in mining Bitcoin, setting up a Bitcoin node, and just trying to be as much a part of it as I could. And it's been a fairly interesting ride since then.
what value did you purchase your Bitcoins at?
The very first Bitcoins I purchased were at a value of 75 cents a coin.
Wow. Okay. And currently today, what are they valued at?
I believe it's about 280 or so.
$280?
Yes.
Okay.
Holy.
Wow.
Okay. So virtually, you have a lot of money.
Virtually. Virtually, I have a lot of virtual money.
So you're definitely gonna have to help me out with this because so you had to pay actual money to get virtual money. Isn't this how game apps work nowadays? And all I can do to do those is like buy a new tree for my farm.
Yes. The difference being that tree on your farm is not redeemable for any goods and services with anyone anywhere.
Talk to my farming pig about that.
The issue that the really revolutionary technology in Bitcoin, the thing that it changes that wasn't previously possible, is that anything that you create, say, a digital tree or any kind of piece of digital information, be it a movie, a music, a piece of text, anything, it can be copied. If you have a tree, I can copy that tree, and I can distribute that tree to millions of other people at basically no cost. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
It's tree socialism.
But in order to have a currency, you can't have that because it won't retain its value. If I give you $1 and you can spend that dollar as many times as you want with as many different people as you want, then the dollar would cease to have any value. Mm-hmm. What makes Bitcoin different is that when I send you, or when I transfer the ownership of a Bitcoin, because a Bitcoin isn't an actual thing, it's entries in a public ledger. But when I sign over that portion of Bitcoin to you, the network verifies that coin is now yours, and I can't spend it again to somebody else.
Okay. Okay, just so what I'm hearing in terms of the way that you're talking about the tree being able to be duplicated and sent to everywhere else, are you saying that there's only a set amount of Bitcoins in the world?
Yes.
And there will never be more or less Bitcoins?
There will never be more or less Bitcoins.
So, how many are there?
Ultimately, there will be 21 million Bitcoins.
Wait, ultimately, so there are being more made.
Well, they become available in a predetermined way. There's a predetermined schedule of inflation, because otherwise the problem is that if you release all the Bitcoins right away, then all the people who started, which is almost nobody, would control all of the Bitcoin. So it's designed to release a certain number of coins in a designated period of time, and that's approximately every 4 years. The rate will drop by a half. It's sort of the half-life of Bitcoin mining, and it started out that every 10 minutes 50 new coins would come into existence as a reward to miners who are contributing computer power to the network. The idea being that this influx of new currency supports the miners until the network is big enough that transactions themselves can support the miners, and this gradually halves over time, and it's already halved once, so we're getting 25 new Bitcoins per 10 minutes, roughly being the inflation of Bitcoin, and sometime probably early next year, it will drop to being 12.5 Bitcoins per 10 minutes.
If I can take this just a couple steps back. So one thing we haven't really gotten a chance to talk about, and I just want to make sure to put everything into perspective here, is that this is a cryptocurrency, which I would ask for you to please define.
I would have asked that too.
And how did this come about? How is this created? And how does somebody just make code for currency?
Well, it came about in 2009. Someone using the username Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper, which is basically just an explanation of what Bitcoin is and how it works, along with the code. And it's still unknown who exactly wrote it. The identity of the person isn't known to anyone. And shortly after it became publicized, he has disappeared from the project and left it in the hands of the other developers. So its origin is somewhat mysterious, but
Doesn't that bother you that nobody knows who this guy is?
no, not really. Whoever it is wanted, obviously, to remain private. They didn't want to. I mean, imagine if you created something like Bitcoin, what kind of pressure you would get from the media, from regulatory authorities, from everybody. And I very much understand why somebody who created something this potentially disruptive doesn't want to be the target of all that. They probably just want to live their own lives and be left alone.
Especially with the millions and millions of dollars the guy's probably sitting on now.
Well, it's some people have
person.
estimated how much he mined early on, and it's hard to say exactly. Assuming that he kept the keys to all the original coins, he could easily be sitting on somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million Bitcoins. None of those original blocks that are assumed to be his have ever moved or been sold. They're still where they are.
So potentially $208 million.
Well, what's interesting is even at the peak value of about $1,200 a coin, he did not move any of those coins.
So is there? I mean, okay. Now, this is probably because I watch a lot of hacker TV movies. Is there any chance that at some point he could just shut down Bitcoins or like take them all, or?
No, nobody can. This person wrote the program, but they don't control the program.
Unless they wrote in a back door, man. I'm telling you, I've watched my hacker movies.
There's speculation on that. There's conspiracy theories that maybe the CIA or someone set this up for their own nefarious purposes. The code is all open source, though, and people can read and look at it and decide if they think it's safe or not. And a lot of security experts, some who are very critical of the concept initially, have looked at it and have not found any kind of flaw like that, any way that there could be a backdoor into it. There are some theoretical attacks that could take place, but they're far from being able to turn it off or to reallocate other people's coins or anything like that. Its security essentially relies on math. Getting
This is where I leave the conversation.
there's a lot of complicated things involved in describing each piece of how it works, because there's a lot of different things that you could mean by security. But for example, the security in a Bitcoin address, which is basically a place where you can. It's not really a place where you can put Bitcoins. An address is something you can send coins to, and the person with the key to that address has the power to reassign those coins. And you randomly generate these addresses. So in theory, anybody could randomly generate an address that happens to have other coins in it, because the security mechanism for storing Bitcoin in addresses is basically just a bunch of little drawers. Say you had a shelf with a bunch of little drawers on it. You have, I'm doing the hand motions now. But say you have a shelf that has 4 drawers across on each row, four drawers tall. So you have 16 drawers. Now, if I have a $100 bill and I put it in one of those drawers, anybody who wants to take that $100 bill would have to look in each one of those drawers to see which one my $100 bill is in, and then they could take it. Bitcoin is the storing of Bitcoins is essentially like that, but on a really grand scale.
You probably should have used more than a 4x4 scale.
The number of possible Bitcoin addresses is I don't recall the exact number, but it's something on the order of the number of atoms in the Earth.
So this is the mining process?
No, this is just to give you an idea of how many possible Bitcoin addresses there are. So that the chances of somebody being able to
lucking upon
forcibly
one.
open enough drawers to find one that already has money in it is essentially impossible.
Okay. Okay. Well, so what do you say to someone who says, well, right now, this is basically just nerd money, and play money to anyone who doesn't exist on the internet?
Well, I would say the same thing that I said to people back in the mid-'90s who said that the internet is just a geek plaything. And now our entire world economy is tied to the internet. It's hard to do anything without using the internet anymore. Bitcoin will be the same way. Certain groups of people are going to use it first, people who understand it, and eventually, as services come into existence that allow it to be more user-friendly and give it exposure to the general population in a way that they can understand and see value in it, they'll adopt it.
Can I just tell you one of the where my life took a turn? I was around when the internet was invented by Al Gore. And I was really into it right away, and I would play around and whatnot, and then I was just kind of like, well, that was enough for me. And my buddy got really into it, and now he makes a lot of money. Just saying. I just wanted to point out.
What were you doing on the web in the early days?
I remember my first naked picture that I found on the internet.
You just found it.
I'll be honest, I can't figure out how I found it, because we were downloading something. I don't even remember how we found this to download, but it was literally because I still had the modem. It was dialing up with that awesome screeching modem noise. And then we were trying to download a picture, and it was just even slower than that. And then finally the nipple appeared, and we freaked out because I was in junior high, and we just shut down my computer. We just hit the power button on the computer because we're like, what did we do?
Okay.
So now you know what I was doing with the early internet. I could have been at the top of the internet porn industry if I would have just realized.
Is that what your buddy does?
No.
Okay. Well,
I should have just said yes for a better story. But okay. So in terms of Bitcoin, why would anybody use Bitcoin? I think that's, maybe somebody out there that has never even heard of Bitcoin might be saying that it's just nerd money, it's fake money. Why would anybody ever want to use it?
Well, I think a lot of the things people are going to use it for in the future have not been figured out yet, because it's it's like an internet of money. The currency application is really just the first app that runs on the blockchain. It can be used for a great number of other things, but I think in the
Okay, just because I don't understand that, give me one example.
well, there's a couple of people here in town actually who have developed an application called Apertus that allows you to store information on the Bitcoin blockchain or on other blockchains, images, text, web pages, and this can be used to store things like contracts or deeds to property, which there's one country, I believe it's Honduras, is actually starting to do that now on the Bitcoin blockchain. And they actually have computer software that's stored on the chain that can be run from the blockchain and updated through the blockchain. And they can have the updates authenticated using the private keys for Bitcoin addresses. So there are some really interesting things that you can do with Bitcoin aside from using it as a currency.
Would a country be able to simply adopt it as the national currency?
They could. They would probably have to acquire a substantial amount of it, and the more complicated bit would be getting the people that in the right place to understand how to do that, how to use Bitcoin. That is.
Well, I've looked it up recently, and the United States if I remember the numbers, it's somewhere like $1.7 trillion in actual circulation right now.
In what?
In United States currency circulation.
Okay.
And you were saying before, what was the total again of number of Bitcoins possible?
21 million.
That will eventually reach a breaking point where people need more than that.
No, because they're divisible by 100 million pieces. And it doesn't matter what your standard unit of denomination is. And in fact, there's a lot of people attempting to lower that at this time, which is the reason for the number you saw earlier on my computer, where it had a 1 milli Bitcoin, where it's 0.280 dollars to the milli-Bitcoin. And it really doesn't matter what the standard denomination of a Bitcoin is. It spends just as well. It makes change just as well.
So you're basically saying, like, where we want to get rid of the penny because they're essentially worthless to us, to most people, they essentially find them to be worthless. You could split that penny, considering one Bitcoin is worth $280. You could have split that, like, what would essentially be a penny into a million other, or like 100 other pennies, if need be.
You can definitely do that, and that's a much less painful process with a virtual currency because it's just moving a decimal point in a computer. Bitcoin could have just as easily been released as having 210 million coins and with a decimal point in a different place. It would have made absolutely no difference. Or the other way around, or as many digits as you would like in either direction, as long as there's enough to make it usefully divisible. The actual size of a Bitcoin is pretty meaningless. I do want to go back quick, though, because I got on kind of a tangent there as far as why anyone would use Bitcoin. But I just wanted to illustrate that in the future, the uses are going to go far beyond the obvious now. But
and to go back to what you were talking about, putting other information on that Bitcoin, see, now that worries me because maybe that picture that I downloaded of that boob, I put that on that Bitcoin, and then I give that Bitcoin to somebody else. Now they've got that picture of that boob.
Well, no.
Now you know what the internet is for, Jeffrey.
And there have been some interesting conversations about putting what people could put on a blockchain and what the effects of that might be. But coins themselves don't exist. You can't put information on a coin. And that gets a little bit more complicated, but I did want to go back.
God, I feel like I'm in the Matrix or some shit. I'm not understanding.
Well, I just like
half
this,
of
how anytime he wants to avoid answering something with, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying you could. Like anything.
I'm happy to go back to it, but I kind of want to answer the original question.
Yeah, no, I think you should.
I just like that. So instead of answering a question, we're like, well, that gets really complicated. A lot of math, and we're like, okay.
Yeah, it's just like,
well,
I'm out.
All right. Okay, I will come back to it. But as far as why you would use it, it's at this point, there's a lot of use in replacing services like Western Union, MoneyGram, or even wire transfers internationally that are very expensive, that require a great deal of personal information to be reported, and that take a lot of time. I've personally used it to pay a programmer in Switzerland to write software that I use for my business, because I couldn't find anyone local who was willing or able to write the software. However, was able to find somebody on Reddit who was willing to accept Bitcoin, and I'm able to pay him in whatever kind of payment schedule I want because of the extremely low cost of sending Bitcoin. It cost me practically nothing.
What do you mean practically nothing?
The transaction fees, which are suggested, I could have attached probably no transaction fee and not had any problems, but transaction fees speed the rate at which your transactions go through. I paid probably in total less than a penny or two US to send this money, whereas if I did Western Union, I probably would have paid many hundreds of dollars to send all of these payments to him. So I just converted the rate to
that
his
part
rate.
baffles me. The fact that we still have a monetary system that, completely understandably, if you had to send like a box full of gold coins across the United States on a wagon run by horses, you're gonna have to pay the guy to deliver it.
But
But
wiring
we still
money.
have. Why would we still have to spend large amounts of money to send money?
Wait, does it cost anything to with Google or PayPal? Can't you just?
Google Wallets does everything for free. If
Yeah.
it's going from, because it'll be the same as using a card.
Right.
From bank account to bank account, you can send it for free. That's cool.
Okay. So there are ways that we can do it beyond.
There are ways that are better than others as far as price and efficiency, but none of them are as cheap or efficient as Bitcoin.
I believe you just said that it cost you a penny or two, and I think we just said that Google costs is free.
It might be free for some people.
Hey, look at this! Look at this math that Jay just figured out. 1 point for me. Guess what? Another thing in math.
All right.
It's complicated, Jay.
Oh, sorry.
It's complicated.
Sorry.
There's a lot of math. Okay.
I could probably very easily send my payments across Bitcoin and not attach any transaction fee. Your transaction fee is basically reimbursing the miners for the service of supporting the network, which you can get away with not doing if you don't want to. The effect of that is that if you don't do it and there are so many transactions that the network is busy, that yours will get kind of pushed to the back of the line, which is not really a huge problem for the most part. The major difference between a free in monetary terms payment system like Google Wallet, which I'm not super familiar with, is that you don't have to attach any personal information to a Bitcoin transaction. You don't have to have a Google Wallet account. The person on the other end doesn't have to have a Google Wallet account.
Doesn't that create problems with transparency?
What do you mean problems with transparency?
Well, okay.
So
if
there's
you
a Nigerian prince
right.
that wants your Bitcoin.
Why would every mob and criminal-based organization in the world use Bitcoin for untraceable transactions?
Well, for one thing, they're not untraceable. The concept that Bitcoin is anonymous is not really correct. Bitcoin is pseudonymous. It doesn't attach any of your personal information by default. If I send you some Bitcoin from my address to your address, that transaction is recorded in the public ledger, which is viewable by anyone who has an internet connection. You can verify that. You can use your address to prove that you either received or sent Bitcoin. And that it's immutable. I can't delete that information. I can't remove it. So if in one way or another my identity becomes tied to that transaction, that transaction is forever provable. It doesn't disappear.
Does the IRS recognize these types of transactions?
Well, that's an interesting question. In the fallout of the Silk Road case, where they had an online drug market that the DEA and a number of other agencies went and busted. in the fallout of that, it was uncovered that a couple of the agents involved in the takedown stole a large quantity of Bitcoin from the Silk Road, which they then transferred to their exchange accounts, which they then turned into dollars and transferred back into their own personal accounts in the U.S.
This was documented?
This is documented, yes.
And documented
now-
on public ledger because Bitcoin ledger is
Yes.
unrefutable.
I would imagine that in a
Nice.
pre-Bitcoin drug bust, when the DEA agent sees a large pile of money and decides to put some in his pocket, there's not much way anybody can prove it.
Right.
Now, what happened here is that one of the exchanges who this agent attempted to get to remove his transaction history from decided to instead give that information over to the IRS, who looked at the blockchain trail where these coins came from and which accounts they ended up in. They were able to figure out that he stole this money, and he's now being charged.
So the IRS has shown support for this kind of system.
Well, the IRS hasn't said anything that I think could be indicated as favorable or unfavorable to the existence or use of Bitcoin. They have shown, however, that it can be that they know how to look through the Bitcoin blockchain and use that information to prosecute somebody that stole money.
But back to the main question.
Right. I guess how can they prove that if? Well, like I guess. Interesting. I guess how can they prove though if there isn't any real identifiable information attached to that account where the Bitcoin was transferred to? How can they be charging this DEA agent on it?
Well, they have
Or anybody.
They have information as to where the coins came from, because all the transactions are on the ledger. So if they know where some of the coins came from, they can follow where all of those coins ended up. And
Right.
they can see the places in between. Now, there's ways to make it more difficult to follow, but this person stole a very large number of coins and ultimately exchanged them all for, at least as far as I know, all for U.S. currency, and deposited them into accounts with his name. The point being that
So really all he needed to do was deposit them into a Swiss bank account and then he'd be fine.
Or just leave them in Bitcoin.
leaving them as Bitcoin might have given him some protection. It's hard to say, but it was known where the coins came from, and I have a feeling this would have come back to him eventually.
So
it's
like a serial number on a dollar bill, they were traceable the origin.
Somewhat.
And they basically just needed to find where they ended up, and they ended up in this DEA's officer's bank account.
Yes.
And so they kind of put two and two together.
Yes.
Makes
But
sense
how
to me.
did they know that it was this DEA agent's Bitcoin account? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I mean, obviously, you don't know like the ins and outs of this case, probably.
Yeah,
But I mean, how
well-
would they figure out who anybody's account is?
There were some account. Well, one of the place that tipped off the IRS to what he was doing was the Bitstamp Bitcoin exchange, which was an account that was in his name that he tried to transfer this to. Now, I could see if you imagine a future where Bitcoin is the standard payment and you don't have to go through an exchange to turn a large quantity of it into dollars, well then how do you track this? And if you think about it though, how many things that you want and need and buy can you acquire without divulging any personal information? Like say I have $100 in Bitcoin that I took from somewhere and I want to turn it into things I can buy off Amazon. Well, what happens when you go and buy these things off Amazon?
Well, I'm not
You have
concerned,
to put your address on it.
Right.
but I'm not concerned about what you or I would do with it. What I'm concerned about is what a mob would do with it. And we all know fronts. We all know how people historically have laundered money. By doing that, even if somebody's laundered money, all you need to do is find the books, draw the lines,
Yeah.
and make a bust. If you add Bitcoin into that, it's virtually untraceable.
No. Bitcoin has all it is a ledger. It has all of the transactions in there. So if you find a copy of their their Bitcoin transactions, that's basically the same thing as finding their books. I don't think that it's a good replacement for money laundering. Cash is far better for money laundering because any transaction you do in cash, you can write down however you want in a book, and nobody can prove it. You can't do a $100 Bitcoin transfer to 3 different addresses and then write it down in the book as one big transfer to an entirely different address and claim it that way. You can't do that.
See, because a long time ago I learned that, you know, cash is a legal tender where you don't have to give your name and it's more anonymous, and that's why I always thought it was interesting when, you know, when you go into a hotel, you used to be able to. I don't even know if they would let you anymore, but if you paid in cash, you didn't have to give them your name or anything. They would try to give you.
What kind of hotels are you going to?
Listen, we're not going to talk. We've already talked about my personal life enough on this episode. Okay, let me ask you about this, Eric. It says, somebody said this about Bitcoin, and I just kind of want your opinion on it. They said there are 3 main users of Bitcoin: the money cleaners, tax evaders, that's number 1, those involved in non-legal activities, and 3, the greedy.
The greedy.
The greedy, general the greedy.
What was the first one?
What a way to blanket statement everyone.
Yeah, the money cleaners, tax evaders.
Meaning money laundering.
I'm assuming that's.
Well, as our.
He says we all know Bitcoin is a sham. It's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. And I can honestly understand why a lot of people at first glance think that it's a pyramid scheme. It does very much look like that. Until you take a closer look and get an understanding of how the technology works.
Because now, does it seem like a scheme because you keep talking about the miners? Is that have anything to do with it?
No, I think people see it as, okay, well, the more people buy into this, the more the price goes up. So the people who are in first benefit more, and that sounds a lot like a Ponzi scheme. Mm-hmm. What they're missing is the actual usefulness of Bitcoin. They're missing the practical application, which I don't think can be understated. It has the potential to take an enormous amount of friction, almost all the friction, out of financial transactions globally. And I don't think that's something that really can be understated at all. And yes, it's going to benefit the first people that invested in it, but it has to. That's by design. It has to encourage people to take part in it, to contribute to it, to buy into it, to grow the system to the point where it is able to handle larger and larger liquidity and larger transactions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at first glance, it's very easy to discount it as a Ponzi scheme. As for the money laundering,
is this why you're trying to get me to sign up for Bitcoin, because then your Bitcoin is worth more?
I don't have any delusion that the
wait, is that true? That your Bitcoin is worth more if he buys Bitcoin?
Probably not, unless he has a lot more money to put into Bitcoin than I think he does.
Fair point.
I don't think there's any realistic scenario in which me convincing people to invest in Bitcoin is going to notably affect the price of Bitcoin. And I don't think that people should just blindly buy into Bitcoin or anything else without having an understanding of it.
What would prevent a large government like the United States from simply purchasing all the available Bitcoin?
Well, nothing. There's not that much of it available, though. There's only so much coin available on the market at any given time. All they would do is drive the price up really high.
Okay. I'm just trying to think this out because it's, obviously government-run currencies do not appreciate competition.
No.
And I'm kind of wondering at what point governments would even be willing to cooperate with cryptocurrencies, and presumably if it's popular enough, they would have to recognize it. But is this the first cryptocurrency?
Yes, there are some earlier attempts at making a virtual currency that I don't know that I would describe any of them as a cryptocurrency, though.
Okay. So this is the be-all, end-all cryptocurrency. The answer to all the cryptocurrency problems.
Well, I mean, it's the first cryptocurrency. there are a number of spin-offs of Bitcoin. It's an open source program that anybody can copy, manipulate, and make their own version of if they wish, and many hundreds of attempts at this have been tried. Could it potentially be done better than Bitcoin? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Reasonable to think.
So would that take the value out of Bitcoin?
I don't think so. There are some very interesting altcoins, we call them the spin-offs, that have introduced different methods of inflation and various other novel traits that make their coin distinct from Bitcoin and in some places arguably better. The main problem, though, with overcoming Bitcoin is the network effect. Of these many hundreds of alternative copycat Bitcoins, very few of them have any value at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple that have a small fraction of the value of Bitcoin, and the reason is that none of them are different enough to justify people switching over. It's kind of similar to an accepted social network. Like, you have Facebook, and Google makes Google Plus. And even if Google Plus is a lot better than Facebook, why are people going to jump ship? They're already invested in Bitcoin. They already use Bitcoin. There's already all kinds of merchants that accept Bitcoin. There's major venture capital involved in Bitcoin. Why would anybody switch to another one that has some kind of a novel improvement? And I think unless somebody can come up with something that is radically better than Bitcoin.
I've got it.
You've got it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. You know how popular... Okay, so you were talking that you can attach things to Bitcoins in the chain block.
Well...
Whatever he said. All right, right?
This is gonna be good.
That's true, right? You said you can do that.
Sort of.
Okay, don't overcomplicate this.
Okay.
All right, so you can do that. And you also know how popular dick pics are. This is DickCoin, where every DickCoin has a different picture of a dick on it, and you trade them like pogs.
Wait, well, why don't we just take pictures of our dicks from all different angles? Can there be only one picture per dick?
There's
One picture per dick? Well, yes, that's what makes it valuable.
Because it's unique.
Yes.
Okay.
See, I mean,
What would you
I'm
do if
just
you
saying.
found your own dick on a coin?
Well, why? Of course, I would want to own that coin.
But then everybody out there would want to own the coin of their own dick. It
Yes.
would be a fad.
I know. Well, I mean, I know, and then I'm owning all the dicks right away. so then that way, if you want your dick coin,
Yeah. So you're hoarding dick.
I've got
And-
all the dicks. Coins, dick coins.
Dick coins.
I don't see a way how this is not going to work.
I'm sold. Sign me up. Sign me up. Okay. So, can Bitcoin exist without other currencies?
Sure, it could. I don't think that that's what's going to end up happening, but there's no reason that it couldn't.
What about
Okay, zombie apocalypse. Money isn't worth anything anymore. Bitcoin. Let's say the internet still works. Bitcoin worth anything?
As long as the internet still works, Bitcoin should still work. If you have an apocalyptic scenario where basically all the infrastructure is destroyed, it doesn't much matter, though, does it?
Well, see, Bitcoin would still be worth something.
Still?
I think so. All right, enough
Although
about
it would lose value because most of the dicks would now be zombie dicks, and zombie dicks
that
do
would
not...
increase the value because you would see they would be pre-zombie.
Right, but no zombie wants a coin of their own pre-zombie dick.
I know, but everybody wants to say, like, hey, that zombie, what do you think his dick looked like before?
Wait, I think I've got that one. Okay, I think Eric's crying now, and I don't think it's because he's laughing.
Right.
Okay, what do you? what do you say to the skeptics out there who will suggest that currency, by definition, in order to meet inflation, needs to increase in a controlled and persistent manner?
Well, Bitcoin is the only currency that's increasing in a controlled and consistent manner.
That sounds like what he was saying
But you
before.
said there's
yeah.
a cap at some point.
Yes, at some point that will end.
At that point, it's still infinitely indivisible.
Well, it's divisible by default to 100 million pieces of a Bitcoin, and I'm, whatever 100 million times 21 million is, that's how many individual units there are in Bitcoin. Though, should we ever hit a point where that becomes a limitation to us using the currency, we can extend it in a number of ways. The currency itself, the Bitcoin protocol itself, could potentially be patched to extend it, though more than likely we're going to use a lot of side chains. Other blockchains that are worked off of or based on the value of Bitcoin are connected into Bitcoin in some way. Because if you think about it, you have a service like a Coinbase or some of these companies that hold a Bitcoin wallet, and they have transactions between their users. They're kind of like a PayPal for dollars.
Mhm.
Now, if you have a PayPal account and you send Jeffrey $1 in PayPal, PayPal isn't literally taking a paper dollar from you and handing it to Jeffrey.
Right.
And if a Bitcoin company doing this sort of thing isn't going to send an actual Bitcoin transaction on the actual Bitcoin network between you, it's just going to change the balance in your accounts.
Mhm.
So probably the vast majority of Bitcoin transactions are going to happen off the network and aren't going to actually be Bitcoin transactions. Like if I were to get one of these, people have things that are a paper wallet, like a printed out key to a Bitcoin or a portion of Bitcoin that they stick on the back of a coin or that they put on a piece of paper. If I have one of those and I hand it to you, you now possess the key to that Bitcoin and I no longer do, but that isn't on the ledger.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that can happen that don't actually take up any space on Bitcoin.
Well, okay, so
Oh, so then actually, is there, Jeffrey was all worried about the mob or whatever, but like, let's say you have a bunch of, you illegally bought something, or so let's just say somebody bought something illegally with Bitcoin, and so it's in their address now, and please correct me if any point if none of this makes sense, like DickCoin.
Okay.
But
I didn't feel the need.
So and then like the IRS figures this out, or the DEA figures this out, and they've discovered that this address was used to buy a bunch of heroin, whatever, just something illegal. But you've given all this paper, you know what I mean, or basically these keys of Bitcoin to somebody else. But wouldn't it still? Well, I guess you're the one who bought it. But okay. So then, but wouldn't? Okay.
You're
Nope.
saying-
My
okay.
argument, I feel, is like I'm falling down around me.
Okay.
Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Well, I think I get I know what you're getting at here, and that's can I use an address for some kind of nefarious purpose and then hand it off to some other unwitting person to frame them for said crimes?
Sure.
And no, not really, because you're not really supposed to even reuse addresses on Bitcoin. Every single transaction generates a new address unless you intentionally use the same one, like I send you payments twice to the same address. But that's not the way it's designed to be worked or to be used. So could I potentially do something where I send you some coins to an address that I know you control from an address linked to me while I'm doing something nefarious? I could, but I could also send coins to anyone. So it's I guess it's analogous to trying to frame someone by sending them a package. And anybody with your address can do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've done anything wrong.
Okay.
yeah, Jay, that's what I would have said.
Yeah, that one. So what about this? Like, does it make any sense that this person is saying that? How? Oh, okay. And never mind. We did cover this, talking about the greedy. I think that stood out because
well-
it seemed like a pyramid scheme. I
Yeah.
suppose that's how they're using it.
Well,
as-
it's clear that the earliest investors and those involved
benefit
with
from it.
Well,
Yeah, they're gonna get the
that's
biggest
true of
benefit.
pretty much anything that works. I mean, the
Right.
earliest people to invest in
Apple.
technology that takes off or in a
Yeah.
company that takes off are going to benefit financially from that. And
I watched
that's
Forrest
just
Gump.
common sense.
He got a lot off Apple.
He did.
Shrimp.
And
Enough
shrimp.
to get a shrimp boat. Yeah.
It's going to benefit the early movers substantially.
And that concludes part 1 of our interview with Eric Olson on the subject of Bitcoin. Stay tuned next week as we conclude this interview and we finish talking about Bitcoin. Thank you so much for listening.